With our highest score value determined, let's go back to our pinball game mode and work out how we want to work from here. So when the endgame function is called, we want to load the current high scores list and see how it's all working, see what the lowest score is, and determine whether we actually belong in that array. So it means that we need one extra function, which will be used to get the current game save data. So this function is going to be reasonably straightforward. It requires a few things though. It requires a quick setup that allows us to store the current save game data as a variable. So I'm going to create a new variable just called current save object. And this is going to be a high score save object. And now I'm going to create a new function within my game mode, which is just going to be called get save game data. So when get save game data is called, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be checking if the current save object is valid. Now I could drag off this and do is valid and have it set up this way, but one thing I like doing in these situations is right clicking on it and just converting it to a validated get. So we get the save game data and we check if it's valid. Now if it is valid, then we want to just return it. Simple as that. So I'm going to add a new output, which is here. The output is going to output the current save game object. The type is say high score save, and the param type name is going to be current save object, and I'm just going to output that. Now on the other hand, if it is not valid, so if the current save data just doesn't exist, then we want to do a very quick thing. Does save game exist? So we're going to check if the save game exists, which is going to require us to have a save game name. Now, I personally like storing this in a variable since it's the kind of thing that we pass around a bit. If you wanted, you could just type it in every time, but let's create a variable. I'm just going to call this high score save name. And we're going to quickly compile, and the default high score save name is just going to be called, let's go with something simple and just call it high score. So we're going to say, does the save game exist? Called high score. Now if that's true, then we want to go ahead and load it from the slot. So load game from slot is what it's called. So if it's true, we want to load the game from the slot. Which game? The one that we made the variable for. And after we've done that, we want to cast it to the high score save. At which point we could return the save games, or we could sort the save games and then return it to make sure that our high score list is always coming in the correct order. I personally like sorting it in this instance because we're not going to use it very often. So I'm going to set that up, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. Now the other thing that's worth noting before we go ahead though is to go false. Now if it is false, we want to create a save game object, which is going to be of type high score save. As before, we want to cast it to a high score save. And let's set the current save object to be equal to the high score save. Just going to set it. And I'm going to set it here just quickly to get the function up and running. The other thing that I'm going to do is get my return node over here. It's going to control W and return this. Now obviously it's possible for this loop to actually bail out. So if I wanted to, I could set this up as a pure so that it's always going to push through and cast valid's never going to be an exec pin. Alternatively, I could duplicate this and just return null if either of those fail. They've got no reason to, but it's worth noting that, you know, it's possible. So with that set up, we do probably want to have a quick sort function in there. There's a couple of ways that we could do this. The easiest way is going to be setting up a quick loop inside of our high score save. Just going to create a function called sort save data. Now to sort something like this, what I essentially want to do is I want to get the current array, at which point I would then create a duplicate array. I would then get the highest value and read it into my new array, remove it from this drop the new highest value into that, remove it from this, new highest, remove, and go through it until the array is empty. That's the quickest, easiest way for me to kind of get this going. So I'm going to add that as a simple thing. So to do that, all I need to do is set up a temporary save struct. So I'm going to promote to a local variable called temp save struct. It's good enough. I'm actually not going to set it. I just wanted to create the variable and make sure it was auto set to the correct type. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to get the save struct, and I'm going to do a very simple while loop. So I'm going to get the length of the score, the save struct that we have. I'm going to get the length of that, and I'm going to say if this is greater than 0, while. So how a while function works is it keeps reassessing this here until it's no longer true, at which point it cancels out of the while loop. So in this case, it's going to, because we're going to be removing something from the save struct every time, it's going to keep doing this until the save struct is empty, at which point it's then going to set things up and return things correctly. Now in my situation here, my loop body is going to get the highest value in the save struct. I forgot that I actually don't even need to drag that in because it's part of our thing. So I'm going to determine the highest value, at which point I'm going to add this to my temp save struct. So I'm going to call add, and the thing that we're adding is that struct. At which point from the standard struct array, so the standard array that we have that's holding all the scores, I'm just going to remove this from there. Type in remove index, at which point I'm just going to remove that index there. So this will very simply go through, get the highest value, add it to this, remove the index, go through, highest value, remove index, until we're all set up. At which point the only thing I need to do after that is on complete, I want to tell save struct that it is now equal to my temp save struct. So on complete, we're going to do that, compile, save. So now my pinball game mode, if I go back to here, the thing that I'm going to sneak in is when loading the data, let's do a quick sort. So before I set it, I'm just going to do a very quick sort, save data on it. And that should be all we need to have a functioning sort for our save game. So from here on in, it's time for us to actually set up the rest of this in-game condition to correctly load the save and work from there.